Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all to the Boombox Guru channel. I'm your host, LB. So I got a brand new episode of Digging Through the Stacks. Not quite sure what episode this one is. I guess after I record this video and upload it, I'll look and see what number I'm on. I think this has got to be like number 4, maybe number 5, because I think the Easy E one was number 4 actually. But anyway, this episode I wanted to talk about albums that I slept on that I now enjoy. These were albums that I probably just overlooked, maybe because at the time I was into something else. Maybe I might have heard like a bad review from somebody personally, or maybe I read bad reviews about the record or something of that nature. It could have been anything that might have encouraged me to kind of just skip over these records. But, my own curiosity got the best of me and made me want to check these albums out for myself, and I ended up liking them anyway. And that's something that I've learned to do anyway as I've gotten older as a music fan, is that you kind of, it's all right to listen to other people's opinions when it comes to music, but sometimes really you really got to listen to things for yourself and form your own opinions about music, because sometimes even band members can say that they can't stand the album, and most people can end up loving the record and being what is considered the band's best record. There's actually one album in my picks here where the band members actually didn't like the album, but once I listened to it myself, I realized that, hey, this was a good album, and most of their fans even enjoyed the record. But I'm sure this is something that most of us can really relate to, that we've overlooked albums because of various reasons, and we went back later and revisited them or whatever, and we realized like, hey, I actually like this. Or there could have been albums that you listened to for the first couple times and you didn't really get it. So, but then you went back later, and for whatever reason that can't be explained, it just clicked with you, and you kind of understood it, and you really enjoyed the album. There's a couple in my picks that happened to me that way. So what I did was for this episode, I just picked 5 albums that I could think of right off the bat where I overlooked them. Maybe I didn't like them initially, but I went back and listened to them later, and I ended up enjoying them. Or maybe I read reviews or heard reviews from people that didn't really give it great glowing reviews or whatever, and I decided to skip the record, but then I listened to it myself. Just to change an opinion when it comes to music, man. I'm pretty sure that's something that we all can relate to, man. But yeah, without further ado, we're gonna get into this video. I'm gonna talk about these 5 albums that I initially slept on and once had certain opinions about it, but went back later and had a change of heart and actually really enjoyed them, man. So stay tuned and check this out. If you're viewing this video right now, if you could just go ahead and do me a huge favor, if you could just hit that thumbs up and give me a like, as well as share the video and subscribe to the channel, because that does help out a lot. Okay, so the first album, or better yet, the CD that I'm gonna talk about is Mother's Finest, Another Mother Further, released in 1978. I want to make sure I say that title slowly because I don't want anybody watching this to get the wrong idea that I'm saying something else. I mean, I would recommend saying that title 5 times in a row real fast. But yes, Another Mother Further by Mother's Finest, man, released in 1978. Mother's Finest, man, one of my favorite bands. An old friend of mine who's now deceased. I used to work with. He used to talk about this band all the time. That's what really got me into Mother's Finest. And I've always said that this band, they invented funk metal. They were I think they were the first band that was blending hard rock and heavy metal riffs with funk and soul. I don't think anybody was doing that before them. I mean, I know you had bands like Funkadelic that was blending funk with like acid and psychedelic rock, which a lot of people call psychedelic soul. You had Sly and the Family Stone. You had a lot of bands that were blending like funk and soul with rock music, but nobody was doing it as heavy as Mother's Finest, to my knowledge. But this is their third studio album, and this is actually, I think this is probably their most popular record. It's definitely their most accessible record that's easy to find. So when I first got into the band, this was actually the first Mother's Finest that I ever bought. I found it in a local record store that I went to one day, and when I seen it in the R&B section, I immediately grabbed it. and I was like, hey, here's my chance at hearing the Mother's Finest album. I will say that when I first listened to this album, I liked it, but I was a little bit disappointed, man, because it didn't really have the sound that I was looking for. It was actually the album before this, the second studio album, the self-titled album, from '76. That was actually the record that really made me a fan of Mother's Finest, because that album really had that good blend of hard rock, heavy metal riffs with funk, R&B, and soul music. It was just a good blend, a good balance throughout that whole entire record. And that's actually my favorite Mother's Finest album. Along with Black Radio Won't Play This Record from '92, as well as Iron Age from 1981. Those will be my top three Mother's Finest albums. This one, however, I kind of liked it, but it wasn't what I was looking for and what I thought I was going to get, so I kind of set it off to the side for a long time. But recently, maybe like last week or so, man, I was lying in bed, couldn't sleep, decided to put on some music to listen to until I drifted off to sleep, and I decided to listen to this record. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the mood or whatever, but I actually enjoyed it a lot better than I did when I first listened to this album. And even though I don't know if I'm ready to say that it's one of my favorite Mother's Finest albums, and that's because they definitely leaned further into funk and soul on this album. I mean, it still has some hard rockers like Mickey's Monkey, Piece of the Rock, Hard Rock Lover. It definitely has some hard rockers on here, but majority of the songs, they just lean further into straightforward funk and soul. But those moments for me were even fine. I even enjoyed those moments because I am a fan of that style of music as well. You know, you can check out my Funkadelic videos and Prince videos and stuff like that. So I am a fan of that, but it's just that when it came to Mother's Finest, I was expecting something a little bit heavier, and they do that on songs like Hard Rock Lover and Mickey's Monkey and Piece of the Rock. They do it on those songs, but it's just that prior album, that self-titled album from '76, they just did it so much more and throughout the record and heavier, and they kind of scaled back on the hard rock a little bit on this record for a more straightforward funk and soul sound for the most part. But I still enjoy those songs like this Go This Way, This Go That Way, which is somewhat of like a disco track, but it's still good. Burning Love, Thank You for the Love, Baby Love, which I think was a big hit for Mother's Finest back then. But in any regards, who knows? The more I listen to this album, it might end up being one of my favorites. I do know that this is one of the band's most popular albums, but I enjoy it a lot more than I did when I initially heard it. And I think that's because I've spent more time with some of the other albums, such as the self-titled one from '76, Iron Age, and Black Radio Won't Play This Record. Even a few ones that I don't own physically just yet, I spent a lot of time with them. So I've become more ingrained in Mother's Finest music. So that may have a lot to do with me appreciating this album a lot more. But, initially, I thought it was good, but I kind of just set it off to the side. But these days, I can honestly tell you that I really enjoy this album a lot. And I'm probably going to be listening to it a lot more than I used to. But yeah, Mother's Finest, another mother further, at least in 1978. This one, initially wasn't too big on it, but nowadays I can say that it's a good funk and soul album with a little bit of that hard rock that I enjoy from the band as well. Alright, so next album that I want to talk about is Ultra Mega OK by Soundgarden. Released in I think this album came out in 1980. Was it 1988? Yeah, I think it was 1988 or 1987. But I believe it was 1988 when this album came out. I should have looked that up before I started this video. But yeah, this is the debut full-length studio album from Soundgarden. Soundgarden, one of my favorite hard rock bands. R.I.P. to Chris Cornell. He passed away around 2017, man. So that's been about 7 to 8 years now. Man, that was a big loss to rock music. But yeah, R.I.P. to him. But their first studio album, Ultra Mega OK. So this album, I initially steered away from this album because when I really got into Soundgarden, I always had read where the band really did not like this album because of the production. They didn't like the producer that was chosen to produce the record, and they felt that this producer really didn't know what the band was about, really didn't capture how they really sounded, didn't really have any idea what was going on in Seattle at the time as far as rock music. The album originally came out on SST Records, and I think the gentleman that produced the record was a friend of Greg Ginn. I think that's how that particular person ended up producing the album. Anyway, I think it was kind of a cheaper way for them to get the album done or something like that. But yeah, the band members have never really had any positive things to say about this album. And so I always kind of steered away from it because I felt like if the band members don't like it, then maybe this album really does suck. But you know, the completest in me had to get this album in order to complete my Soundgarden collection because it was the only one that I needed in order to have all their full-length studio albums. And lo and behold, around 2017, I think this might have been like just maybe a few months prior to Chris Cornell passing away, Sub Pop Records actually got the rights to this album, and they reissued this album in 2017 with some bonus tracks, the Ultra Mega EP, which has demos and stuff of a lot of the songs that appeared on the album. And when I bought this album, I was actually at my favorite record store at the time, Manifest, that's no longer in business. But I was there, browsing through the rock section, and when I came across Soundgarden section, I started looking through their section, and I seen this CD. I seen this that came out, and I bought it immediately. And when I put it in my car to listen to on my way back home, I was blown away by what I heard. I mean, the album sounded amazing. And now this could be because of the remastered version, because this being a reissue, it was remastered. So I don't know how the original CD pressing or the original pressing of the album sounded. That pressing might have sounded like garbage. But all I can say is that the music on here in general is really good. Even though the band members can't stand this record, I gotta say that they were off to a really good start with this album. You know, I think this album really shows, you really hear Soundgarden at their rawest. You know, throughout the whole record, it feels like the band might have recorded this together live in the studio. That's the way it sounds to me. It just has a real raw and organic feel to it. And it's bluesy. It's real bluesy in a lot of places, man. That's something that I never really heard on the other Soundgarden albums a whole lot. But you also get hints. You also get hints of that Sabbathy influence that was going to come in later, that was really going to really come to fruition on the later albums like Louder Than Love and Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown, which those three are my top three Soundgarden albums right there. But you know, this record, I really like it. You know, it may not be the best Soundgarden album, and it's definitely not better than the ones that I just mentioned. You know, the ones that I just mentioned, which are my top three, those records are so great. They were definitely better. But this album was not garbage by any means. You know, the way the band talks about it, you would think that this album was just totally like terrible, like it was just total garbage, but it's not. It's a real good record. You know, you get that raw, pure Soundgarden sound from the early years. You know, the hardcore punk influences. There's a few hardcore punk influences throughout this record. But I will say that I'm glad that the reissue included that Ultra Mega EP with the early versions of a lot of the songs, because I can kind of see where the band was coming from as far as like the producer not really capturing what they really sound like, because those demos really capture what the band sounded like. It really captures that heaviness that the band had, because you really get that hard rock and heavy metal, that Black Sabbath influences that the band would bring further on their later albums. You really get it on those early versions of the songs on the EP. But yeah, Ultra Mega OK, you know, great record. It's a good record. I think the band got off to a real good start with this album. So that's one of those cases where, you know, maybe sometimes the band can be wrong. You know, I mean, of course, you know, I'm not going to try to challenge them because they are the guys who played on this album. They wrote the songs and everything. But from a fan perspective, I really enjoy this record. And I noticed that a lot of Soundgarden fans really enjoy this record. So if you've never listened to Ultra Mega OK, maybe you kind of steered away from it because you heard the band members' opinions about this album, check it out for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Because for me, when I checked it out for myself, when I bought it and listened to it, I was blown away. And I was pleasantly surprised at how good this album sounds. So, yeah, don't sleep on this one, Ultra Mega OK. Definitely get the reissue. It's got the bonus tracks, which are the Ultra Mega EP, man. I'm telling you, you're really going to enjoy this. But it goes to show that Soundgarden throughout their career, they never put out a bad album. Some may have been better than others, but they never put out a bad one. And this surely is far from being a bad record. So definitely check out Ultra Mega OK whenever you come across it. All right, so this next album that we're going to talk about is actually coming from one of my favorite metal bands of all time, and that's Meshuggah, and their album Catch 33, released in 2005. This is a reissue from 2013 of the album, because the original pressing kind of had a slightly different cover than this. I think there was more in the background on the original cover, but yeah, Catch 33, released in 2005. So this album has always had kind of like a polarizing thing with the fan base. You either love it or you hate it. But in my experience and getting into this album, I've noticed that more fans seem to love this album than hate it. There are a few people that have their negative criticisms about that album, but I always kind of steered away from this record. One reason I steered away from this record for a while was because there's a YouTuber on YouTube that I watch. He did like a tier list on Meshuggah albums, and he didn't really like this album too much. He really just flat out said, "Yo, I really don't like this album," and I kind of took his opinion. I took his opinion in consideration, because most of the time when he talks about music, he's usually right on the ball about it. But this one, he really wasn't for me. I made a post about this album on Instagram, because it was really like one of the only albums I needed to really complete my Meshuggah studio albums. And I posted about it, and I asked people like, hey, should I get this album? Is it really good? Is it bad? And most people that commented on that post, they said to get the album. They was like, one guy was like, yo, what are you waiting for, man? Get this album. It's great. Some people even called it their best record. I've heard a lot of people refer to Catch 33 as being the band's best work. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, but I definitely think it's a great record. Now, the thing about Catch 33 is that this album is not your typical studio album. This is actually an experimental piece. It's probably one of their most progressive albums. What it is basically it's a suite. It's one long song that's broken up into 13 parts. So it's one of these albums that you really can't skip around to. You can't just skip around and shuffle the music. You have to really listen to it in one sitting. That's what it's designed to do. You have to listen to it in one sitting to really get it, because a lot of parts are kind of short and brief, and they segue into like other parts. Like there's like a brief intro right here, and then it's segueing to another part, and then you might get another part where Jens is singing, his vocals come in and stuff like that. You just really have to listen to this album as a whole. And I know that particular YouTuber I watched, I know one thing that was a point of contention with him was that Thomas Hake, he actually didn't play drums on this. He actually used the drum kit from Hell software and programmed the drums. So it also gives it a bit like an industrial kind of feel to it. But I'm a fan of industrial, so I had no problem with it. But when I finally got this album and I finally listened to it, I enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, like I said, it's not your typical studio album where you can just skip around to your favorite songs and your picks. It's definitely designed for you to just listen to this song as a whole. I know there's been a few times where I've been at work and I've put my earbud in and I've just listened to Catch 33 throughout my day. And it kind of helped me to stay focused and, get my tasks done and everything like that. So, like if you're at work or something, or maybe you're out doing yard work or something like that, it's a good album to like put on to just as background music maybe, but it's still a real good record. I think all the parts that make this album go together, I think they were well executed, man. So I really enjoyed this record, and I'm glad that I decided to listen to the record myself and form my own opinions, because I definitely would have been missing out on the gem. But yeah, Meshuggah, Catch 33, real good record. And like I said, it's not your typical studio album. It's an experimental piece, one long song broken up into 13 parts. So kind of similar to what Frederick Thorndahl did with his Special Defects album. Frederick is a member of Meshuggah. He put out a solo album called Soul Niger, and that record, that's kind of how that record is formulated. It's actually more like an experimental piece. It's one long song broken up into multiple parts. So it's kind of similar in that vein. But I really enjoy this record. So I'm one of the ones who fall into the really love this album category. All right, so this next album, uh, y'all are probably gonna, man, y'all are probably gonna go in on me on the comment section for this album. But you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna take a risk with this one. But yeah, my next pick was a Risk by Megadeth, and yeah, this is the original CD pressing, from 1999, I believe, when this album came out. All right, so let me explain myself first, because I know some of y'all in the comment section are probably gonna be like, really, Megadeth, Risk? Because I understand that Risk is considered to be Megadeth's weakest album. A lot of people consider it to be their worst record. And you know, I'm not arguing that this album is not great or anything like that. You know, and you know, amongst the other records like Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia, Cryptic Writings, even the ones after it, yeah, this is a bit of a sore thumb. But I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna tell you. So I skipped this album for a while because I knew about the overwhelming like negative criticism it got. And but you know, it's that completist in me as far as like a music collector, man. I was at the record store. I was at Manifest one day. I was in the youth section. I was looking through Megadeth section, and they had it for like, I think it was like $4.99 or something. Yeah, I think it was like $4.99 or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna grab this album, even though I know it may not be that great. And you know, the first initial listens to this album, yeah, I wasn't too crazy about it. But it was actually the same YouTuber that I talked about on when I was talking about Meshuggah. He actually did a tier list on Megadeth, and he talked about this album, and he kind of gave it some positive reviews. I mean, although I don't agree with him ranking this album above Euthanasia, that was crazy. And I kind of told him that in the comments, but it's just the points that he made in his video talking about Risk. It really made me kind of want to reevaluate the album and really make me want to re-listen to it. So that's what I did. I went back and listened to it. But it was recently I decided I wanted to listen to this album a little bit more, and I kind of started to enjoy it a bit. Especially one day I was on my way to church, and something about that Sunday, the you know, the scenery outside, like I guess the fall weather coming in, and the way the sky looks and everything, the music just fit that whole mood perfectly. And it just made the songs just sound so much better. Another thing about this album is that, you know, I don't really look at it so much as a heavy metal album. I look at Risk as more of a hard rock album. And they lean into other territories such as alternative rock, a little bit of industrial rock. There's a little bit of some songs have a bit of like a southern rock or sort of country rock vibe to them as well. But I don't know. It's just something, the more that I listen to this record, the more I realize, like, you know, this is kind of an enjoyable album. I mean, yeah, it's not the best Megadeth album. You know, it's definitely not the album that I would point somebody or direct somebody to if they wanted to get into Megadeth. I'm going to direct them in the beginning with Killing Is My Business. But, or even Peace Sells or whatever. But it's not one of those albums that I would direct somebody to if they wanted to get into Megadeth. But I just enjoy it. I can't really explain it. I just enjoy it. It's like the more that I listen to it, the more I enjoy it. The more that I respect the fact that Dave Mustaine is a great songwriter. I think that's one thing that you can say about Risk. I think that's a positive thing that anybody could say, is that Risk, it really showed just how diverse of a songwriter Dave Mustaine is. You know, 'cause I even think he said that Wanderlust is one of his favorite songs that he ever wrote, and it's quite different than anything that Megadeth ever done. I mean, this whole album is. I mean, hence the title Risk. But I just enjoy the album a little bit more. That's all I can really say about it. You know, yeah, it's not the greatest Megadeth album. It's far from being that. But the more I listen to it, the more I respect it for what it is and appreciate it. So yeah, not the best in Megadeth's catalog, and I definitely wouldn't consider Risk to be my favorite Megadeth album. But you know, with repeated listens, I actually enjoy this record a lot more than I used to. Okay, so now we're down to my final album on the list that I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to talk about the most recent album from Rob Zombie, which is gotta read the title, the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy by Rob Zombie. This is his latest album that came out in 2021. This was a bit of a comeback album for Rob Zombie, because I think it had been like 5 or 6 years since that last album. This was also the last album. This will also be the last album with John 5 on the guitar. As we all know, he left the band to join Motley Crue, which, my personal opinion, I think that was a bad decision. But then again, him leaving brought back in Riggs, and most of Rob Zombie's original band from his first two records are back with him, except for the drummer, which was John Tempesta, which I doubt John Tempesta would come back. But anyway, back to this album. When I first bought this album, I didn't think it was bad. You know what I'm saying? I didn't think it was good. I kind of just had it like, okay, this is kind of weird. You know? And I mean, Rob Zombie has always had some kind of out there weird moments on all his work. Even with White Zombie. You know what I'm saying? You listen to some of the early White Zombie stuff, that's like, whoa, that's like very kind of left field. But this album, in the context of Rob Zombie, it just left me kind of like, I don't know what to think about this album. It's kind of weird. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I don't like it. But so I listened to it a few times, stepped away from it for a few weeks, and I came back to it, and I don't know what happened. For whatever reason, it just clicked with me. I just started to enjoy it a lot more. I'll tell you, my biggest problem with this album was the overabundance of interludes. I know interludes have always been a part of like Rob's music, even on White Zombie, but he never really had a ton of interludes. This one just had tons of interludes on it, and a lot of those interludes I felt like were wasted potential to be actual songs. A lot of those I felt like could have been some really dope songs that could have made this album a lot more interesting than what it is. But I got over that, and for whatever reason, the album just clicked with me a little bit. It just clicked with me. It was like, okay, hey, I kind of like this a bit now. I guess I needed to step away from it. But I kind of liked it, the heaviness that was coming back in it. I kind of liked him going back to that groove, implementing that groove metal style in a lot of the songs. I even liked a little bit of the quirky, weird moments, like him kind of venturing off into funk in a little bit in some places and stuff like that. I even liked the kind of 90s industrial rock sound of a few of the songs on here as well. So I really feel like that this is probably the best Rob Zombie album that's come out in quite a while. I definitely think that this record was better than the last album he did, which I can't even remember the title of that. The Celebration Dispenser something. I don't know. I can't even remember the full title of that one. But the one that came out in 2016, I definitely think that this album is way better than that one. But you know, I just like it. I just like it a lot better, you know. And I actually enjoyed John 5's playing on here. His playing on here was actually quite heavier than it has been in the past. Cause as much as I like John 5, I've always thought that his playing was not heavy enough for Rob Zombie. I just kind of missed that heaviness and that tone of Riggs, which I'm glad he's back in the band, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do on the next album. But yeah, I initially didn't really get this record at first, but it took some time for me to step away from it and to come back to it, and it just clicked with me, and now I enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's one of Zombie's better albums in recent years. Not his greatest work in my opinion. I'm looking forward to what he's gonna do on the next album, especially since he has most of his original band back in tow. But yeah, still I like it a lot better. It's a lot better than I initially thought, and I enjoy the weirdness and experimentation about it. So yeah, the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy, you know, it's definitely one that I like now and I enjoy a lot more than I used to. Alright, so that's it for this video, this episode of Digging Through the Stacks. Me talking about certain albums that I initially slept on, overlooked, but now I went back and I enjoy them a lot more. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. And once again, if you did enjoy this video, if you could just hit that thumbs up and give me a like. If you can share this video as well as subscribe to the channel, because it does help. I also want to give a huge shout out to everybody that's been supporting my channel, that's been watching the videos, leaving positive comments. I really do appreciate it. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week, and love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.